So as I say, this will be a bit different. The theme is how trauma and suffering contribute to wisdom. The Dalai Lama, for example, says it is under the greatest adversity that there exists the greatest potential for doing good, both for oneself and others. And I don't want to claim that I'm any wiser and more compassionate than any of the rest of you, but I have had, I think, an unusual lifetime of trauma that I want to discuss, present a little bit. And it's brought about partly because over the past 2.5 years, I've had a diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment, which may or may not lead to some form of dementia, although it likely will, but maybe very slowly. And one of the ways it comes out, and it just showed itself right there, is where I'll get lost for a minute in thought and can't remember where I'm going. Oh, also, by the way, it's the reason, it's part of the reason why I have trouble sometimes remembering the melodies of chants. And I have reached a point in my practice where it is what it is. As I've mentioned before, I have a daily practice that includes reflecting on the 4 thoughts that turn the mind. And the first 2 of those are, one is to appreciate and just love the wonder of the human life, which doing that every day has made a big difference for me. Reflecting on that every day has really made a big difference in appreciating my life and appreciating life. And the second is impermanence, to accept what comes and make it your friend. And I over the last, pretty much since I've been a student of Lama Surya's, there have been several changes in me. One of which was about 3-4 years back, when I was able to just let go of ego. And more recently, learned to really enjoy and respect this human life I have. So I'd like to talk a little bit before we start chanting. There's about suffering, trauma and suffering. And, as one thinks about trauma and suffering and Buddhism and wisdom and leading to wisdom and compassion, the first 3 people who came to mind were Naropa, Marpa, and Milarepa. Each of them suffered a great deal to reach enlightenment. They are, of course, the 3 teachers credited with kind of launching Mahamudra, Dzogchen. I'm not hard to tell the difference, but let's say launching Mahamudra anyway. And they each went through a lot of difficulty. There are stories about the things that Talopa put Naropa through before he would convey Mahamudra to him. And of course, tremendous, much has been written about Milarepa and what Marpa put him through. But, and Marpa too, I think he made 3 pilgrimages from Tibet to India and back in order to bring the Vajrayana teachings to Tibet. And for me, again, I want to be clear that I'm not claiming all this trauma has made me any wiser or more compassionate than anybody else, but maybe there are things in what I'm about to say that will touch something in one or more of you. I'll spare you the complete biography, but I grew up a pretty depressed child. If they knew about childhood depression in those days, I probably would have been diagnosed. But I was born into a much older family, and felt like I didn't. Well, I actually was not wanted by my mother anyway. It was embarrassing to her to have a late life child. Anyway, my father started to get sick when I was around 8 or 9 and died when I was 11 after spending something like 4 months out of his last 18 in the hospital. So I never really got to know him. And he had immigrated to the United States in 1898, leaving his shtetl in what's now Belarus. So when I was born in 1946, I had already lost 2 uncles, 2 aunts, and 5 first cousins to the Holocaust in 1942 and 43. My mother's side of the family also goes back to that same shtetl. So I really had no relatives beyond the 6 or 8 families that had immigrated to the United States before the Holocaust. And as I say, I was a depressed child, but when I was 17, I met a woman named Alice, and her picture is there next to White Tara. And I've mentioned this once before, that she was a mentor. She adopted me as her little brother. She said she'd always wanted a little brother, and I was it. And she was my mentor. She was the first person who told me that I could make a difference in the world, that I could matter. And in 1970 or 71, when I was 26, 27, something like that. Well, less, 20, anyway. She came to visit me in New York, and she lived in Philadelphia. I had then moved to New York, and we spent a weekend together, and it was her kind of fling before starting an assignment, a job she had lined up in Trenton, New Jersey. And she was the kind of person who made things happen. So she had created a program where she became a Rutgers accredited professor, and she could go into Trenton State Prison to teach for credit courses. And so she left my apartment on Sunday to take the train to Trenton. And the next day, I called her husband to kind of check in with him and let him know how it went. And he wasn't at work. And I said, "Oh, why? What's the matter? What happened?" And the receptionist said, "Oh, gee, I don't know if I can, if I'm free to tell you this, but his wife died." And it took me a minute. "Alice?" And she had been stabbed to death in a maybe a mugging that went bad or whatever, but she had been stabbed to death. So that was my first experience with sudden traumatic loss. And I'm chuckling because the next came in 1976 or 77, where I survived a terrorist bombing in New York City. Now, to say I survived the bombing may make it sound like more than it was. It was a fairly small bombing. And I was 6 or 7 floors directly above it at work. I was working for Mobil Oil, and a Puerto Rican nationalist group planted a bomb in the lobby, as I say, 6 or 7 stories below me, and killed one person and injured a half a dozen. And of course, like an idiot, I went out that way before they issued the order to evacuate the other way. And so I saw what had happened. And the other weird thing about that was that when I went home to the apartment that I lived in, I saw a crowd of reporters outside, that people I knew from my previous days in newspapers. And I said, "What's going on? Why are you all here?" And so, "Oh, the guy who was killed in the bombing over at the Mobil building lived here." So the guy who was killed lived in the building I was in. Turn the clock ahead to 83, 84, something like that. And I'm still living in the same apartment building in New York City. And I get a midnight telephone call from my brothers, 15 years older than me, informing me that our uncle and aunt, who we were closest with, had been shot to death. And I said, "Well, who would kill them? What it was like, left me speechless." And I remember my brother's words. He tried to. He said, "Well, first he said, well, there was $400 in cash that was in a drawer that wasn't taken." And I said, "Well, why is he telling me this? So it wasn't robbery. Why is he telling me this?" And then finally he said, "It could have been Barry." And then, of course, I realized Barry was their youngest son, who was my playmate growing up. We were around the same age. And he was the closest cousin I had in the family as we were growing up. But when we both turned like 20 or so, he began showing symptoms of paranoid schizophrenia. And it took, you know, 4 or 5 more days before he was arrested and confessed, but he had shot them both to death. And that was the closest I've come to a breakdown. I remember there was one period when I was when all I could do was sit on the floor in my apartment, and it was the old days of tape, cassette tapes and boom boxes, and I played "Hey Jude" over and over again. "Hey Jude, don't make it bad. Take a bad day and make it better." And it left me with what I think is of as the Western world's mantra which is na 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 na, hey Jude. Um, I clung to that during that period, and that was the period when I began a serious search for religion. I had an interest in Buddhism going back to college days, college age, but that launched my search, which led eventually to me starting to read Thich Nhat Hanh and other things, and grounded me in mindfulness meditation, um, which helped me in the next uh, trauma, which was and all of the I did some really stupid things, trying to find a purpose, kind of survivor's guilt, trying to find a purpose in my life after Barry killed Uncle Eddie and Aunt Margaret. And by the way, Barry, 10 years later, hung himself in his prison cell. Um, and due to my doing a bunch of stupid things, I ended up in a relationship with a woman who forged my name and defrauded me and all that kind of stuff. And I had to declare bankruptcy, which blew my mind. And while I was going through bankruptcy and having, read Thich Nhat Hanh and being grounded in all of that, I realized what's so special about the present moment is that the phone can be ringing with collection agencies, people threatening to break my legs, and nothing can take away this moment right now. Nothing, nobody can take that from me. Then another phone call came about maybe 15 years ago. It was my niece, my sister and brother-in-law's oldest daughter. They were the people I was closest with. The people in my family that I was closest with. And Linda, my niece, told me that there had been an accident that day. Marilyn, my sister, was 75 and my brother-in-law was 86. And she was driving and they were going to the movies and there was an accident and she had been killed, didn't even make it to the hospital. He was in a crisis unit and I managed to get there just after he died. A crisis unit in Delaware. By the way, back to the phone call with Barry killing his parents, I drove through the night. I lived in Manhattan, didn't own a car, but I managed to take a taxi, rent an Avis car, drive to Philadelphia, and inform my mother before she would hear news in the morning that might include something about their death. And then, of course, on June 1st, 2015, our son Thomas, we got another one of those surprises where a deputy sheriff is knocking on the door or ringing the doorbell at 7 a.m. to inform us that, and I kind of headed them off to hear it first before I brought Carol down, but to inform us that our son Thomas had died. He was skateboarding home in Charlottesville from a day of bar hopping without a helmet, of course, and went down a steep hill and fell and died. Um, uh, and and then one more thing that I'll mention is that when I went looking for religion, I found both Unitarian and Universalism and Buddhism, which I thought fit well together. And I became pretty active in Unitarian Universalism. Um, and after the death of my uncle and aunt, um, I started blogging as a way to mm, enhance my spiritual life. Um, and I wrote something that offended the gods of Unitarian Universalism, and I was canceled by my religion. I was canceled by Unitarian Universalism, which is like unheard of, but it was also pretty traumatic for me. So, as I say all that not to not to bring the party down, but at each of those stages, after Thomas's death, our son, it was only, I think, 7 months later when I attended my first Lama Surya retreat. And on the third day of that retreat, went, this is my guy. This is my root teacher. Um, and since then, I mean, yes, I practiced for maybe 30 years before then, but I've gone much deeper since I've been exposed to Vajrayana, which I always avoided before. Um, and I feel like all of that practice and all of those traumas, suffering, have only contributed to my awakening. Um, and with that, I've probably said enough about myself. I'll leave some time. I'll try to leave some time if anybody wants to comment or ask questions later. Oh, I did remember. I did remember to record. Okay. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Homage to the fully awakened, perfectly enlightened Lord Buddha. Buddham saranam gacchami. Dhammam saranam gacchami. Sangham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam gacchami. Dhammam saranam gacchami. Sangham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam gacchami. Dhammam saranam gacchami. Sangham saranam gacchami. I take refuge in the enlightened Buddha. I take refuge in the sublime Dharma teaching. I take refuge in the noble Sangha community. From now until reaching perfect Buddhahood, for the benefit of all sentient beings without exception, we shall practice the six perfections wholeheartedly, day and night. Sentient beings are numberless. We vow to liberate them. Delusions are inexhaustible. We vow to transcend them. Dharma teachings are boundless. We vow to realize them. The Buddha's enlightened way is unsurpassable. We vow to embody it. May all beings possess happiness and the inner causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the inner causes of suffering. May all beings remain undivided from the sacred joy which is free from suffering. May all beings come to rest in great peace and equanimity beyond attachment and aversion to friends, enemies, or strangers. And with that, I forgot my bell, but I'll go get it in a minute. And I thought we might start with a metta meditation to just kick us off. So we'll sit in our meditation posture. Take a couple deep breaths. And think of a loved one. I'm sorry, no, think of ourselves first. Metta begins with ourselves. May I be happy. May I be well. May I find my inner peace. For a loved one, may you be happy. May you be well. May you find inner peace. For our family and friends, any community we want to recognize, may we be happy. May we be well. May we find inner peace. And if you can bring your awareness and your imagination to the whole world, including those we love and those we don't love so much, and those we feel who have harmed us. May we all be happy. May we all be well. May we all find inner peace. And with that, we'll rest in awareness, open awareness. Letting things come and go, any words we hear, accept them and let them move on. Any thoughts we have, any feelings we have, And if we lose touch with our awareness, we can always come to our breathing, our bodily sensations, sights, sounds, and use them to lead us back into awareness. Feel free to stretch, take a deep breath anytime. The open awareness meditation we practice doesn't require rigidity. In fact, discourages rigidity. If you like, you can see if you can find your awareness. Doesn't have a center, doesn't have any boundaries, and yet it exists. As they say, it's empty, but that doesn't mean it's nothing. O Aryatara, please lead us on the way of great liberation. Remove all obstacles to swift accomplishment. Fulfill all wishes and aspirations. Relieve all sufferings. Dispel all fears, anxieties, and hesitations, and protect us from doubt. Empower us as liberators of beings, so that the ultimate benefit of ourselves and others is quickly achieved. Infinite emerald green mandalas of magical activity emanations instantly pervading the entire universe. May supreme enlightenment like yours be ours. Through the merit of this, may the light of the Buddha's precious teaching remain for ages to come, the ground for every single kind of benefit and happiness. May all the supreme holders of the teachings who uphold its living truth accept to live for eons and their lotus feet stand firm. And so may the sun of altruism and well-being in all its blazing splendor shine the brilliant light of the study and practice of Buddha Dharma throughout every corner of the universe. May all beings everywhere with whom we are inseparably interconnected and who want and need the same as we do, may they be awakened, liberated, healed, fulfilled, safe, and free. May there be peace and harmony in this world and an end to war and violence, poverty and hunger, inequality and oppression, greed and cruelty, pandemics, famine, droughts, earthquakes, all kinds of natural disasters. May all be free from fear, harm, danger, anxiety, and insecurity. And may we all together complete the spiritual journey. One beloved community, one circle, one family, all the way home. I bow to all of you. And as I said in the beginning, I'd leave some time for comments or questions or anything. I know that was, I probably felt heavy and it was a lot to take in the beginning, but I thought I'd leave some time. Oh, and talking about suffering and leading to wisdom and stuff. If any of you are fans of This American Life or have a podcast app or something, they have a special one. Their most recent episode is a special episode, and it's an interview with a man in Gaza about his need to continually move his family. And with that, any questions, comments?
Mel, thank you so much. It was really beautiful that you show yourself like that, and we get to see you, this aspect of yourself, and get to see aspects of ourselves in this way. So I really appreciate it. Thank you. It really feels good in my heart to know you. Thank you. Yeah, in that way, all the way. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been lately in my meditations and things. A lot of my past has been coming back to me. I've been wondering, what good is it? I'm in the present moment. I should be able to let it go. And then I thought, well, maybe doing this would help me let it go.
Yeah. I'm having in conversation with this native man who studied with Huichols in Mexico for 14 and a half years. And one of the things he was sharing with me is how, the present moment is made up of all our past, and also it's going to create the person that you are, the person that you are creating. And so basically all we have is now. But one of the things he said is you can go back and change those experiences that you had. I mean, he's telling me this, and reframe them, which we do in our practice. I think that's what they, some of those hard things can't, difficult things, live, and they, with the goodness in our hearts that we're creating in this practice, and the compassion, and it's compassion for ourselves, that they just slowly dissolve. I say slowly because I wish they would happen much faster. And that it leaves residue and pretty soon it's just we can smell the roses. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got something, Mel. Bless your heart. In A Course in Miracles and Dzogchen, what I feel happens is as we get more courageous and open, relaxed, breathing, that then allows those layers of hurt and pain to come up. And they'll continue to come up. That's the process. So you just keep letting them come up. I'm talking about me too. Come up. But then how do I think and feel about the person or event? Are they Buddha? Are they God, source, whatever the word you want to call it? There's only source. There's only Rigpa. These are our projections, collective and individual. But yeah, they're coming to heal. You know that. But and I do that weekly at Course in Miracles meeting, and people sometimes say, well, I thought this was going to get easier. What the hell? All this stuff showing up. Well, that's healing. If you weren't doing the work, practicing the Dharma, then you stay stuck. This shit stays hidden. It's hidden and is suffering. Layers of suffering just don't get healed. So it's marvelous. It's showing you're doing the work, and you just continue to do the work. And how do I feel about even each person here? I'll slowly go through each tile. You're Buddha, you're God, you're light, the light and source. How do we think? And it may take 100 or 500 times or 1,000 times. It does not matter how many times we practice on a person or an event, because ego wants you to stop. I ought to be healed by now. What the hell? But it just keeps refreshing. It keeps showing up. Bless our heart. And then also it shows up for the collective karma. Sometimes this isn't your own karma showing up. It's the collective karma. So thank you for everything everybody does. It helps us all. Love you guys and women and others.
Me too, a comment. Thank you, Michael and Glenda. So here you see the purpose of the group shining so nicely, because we're all let's say healing each other home. And so of course that I realize how courageous it is. And usually once we get going, like, oh, didn't need as much courage as I thought I did. And also being the son of two parents that died of complications of dementia, I realized that one of the things that happens is a withdrawal from the world, right? It's like, of course, we don't want to be seen in our diminishing kind of capacity, and it's just like we're a little shy. So there again, how courageous and strong, and then you go like, oh yeah, I can do this, I can, and then it becomes indeed what the purpose of what you were talking about today. Then if it even happens, we have to still see if there will be diminishing capacity for you, although you seem to point at some of it, but it's not apparent to us yet. Then you start seeing that it already is transforming into wisdom, and for all of us. And yeah, and then may your awareness. So you've been doing that for so long. So my parents didn't have that, right? So all they had left was thoughts, and then not so many thoughts left. And then the only thoughts that were left standing were those of fear. And you, even if you have no more thoughts, you will come back to your awareness, because awareness does not dim, right? Awareness will be there, shining brightly. So now, even if you have no words left, you will be shining from your heart. And we all still see you, and you can, it will be all of us, the whole world. It's very interconnected indeed. And so, everything that moves from our mind is the adornment, but we don't need any adornment to be beautiful. So we see you, how beautiful you are. And so thank you so much. And You don't need the vocabulary, although yes, that's a beautiful tool for sharing the Dharma and the realizations. But in the long run, we find the deepest profundity in the stillness. And you obviously have found inner peace, like you told us. May you find inner peace. You found it, and may it continue to proliferate your whole body, mind. And I really quickly looked up a short poem by David White. Somehow I felt like reading it. It's called Tuluco Lake. In this high place, it is as simple as this. Leave everything you know behind. Leave everything you know behind. Leave everything you know behind. Step toward the cold surface. Say the old prayer of rough love and open both arms. Those who come with empty hands will stare into the lake astonished. There in the cold light, reflecting pure snow, the true shape of your own face.
Beautiful.
Thank you for being with us today, Mel. This is why this group is here.
Thank you all, our little collection of Buddhas. May you all have a great Christmas weekend, if that's what you celebrate, or holiday weekend, or a great weekend. Love you all.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mel. Love you all.